I'd gone out for the day with friends, and he didn't like it. And when I came back home, he was angry and he accused me of going off and having an affair, which I hadn't. And he picked me up and threw me against the wardrobe, and I ended up with concussion and whiplash. And thought, I can't stay here. It's not safe. He's going to end up killing me if I'm not careful. So it was that realization that I needed to do something here for my own safety. And then it thought, okay, well, why are these patterns repeating itself? Why have I had that sort of childhood and then gone into a similar environment in my adulthood? Something here needs to change.
Brooke, at what stage in your life did you find yourself? What relationship broke you to discover yourself?
I think it was my relationship with my mother. She's a narcissist, and I didn't discover that she was actually a narcissist until my late 30s, and it kind of like broke me and then kind of made me as well, because I then went on a journey of self-discovery, of kind of making sure my beliefs were my beliefs and not ones I'd inherited from her, and that she'd kind of ingrained into me as a child. So it's a really big kind of journey of discovery for myself as well. So, and I've now turned my pain into my superpower, really, and my passion to help other women with their relationships with their narcissistic mother and their childhood trauma.
People use the word narcissistic, and sometimes I think they don't use it in the right way. What would be your definition of narcissism or narcissistic behavior, I should say?
Yep, it's somebody that hasn't got any empathy for anybody else. Their main concern is how they feel soothing their inner child wounds, and it doesn't matter how it affects anybody else. It's they just their only concern is to feel, try and soothe their own inner child wounds, because they aren't happy people. They're very insecure, and they don't feel safe, and they don't like anybody else being happy around them, because that just hurts their inner child wounds even more. So they're often, can be physically there, but emotionally not there at all. They can be overcritical, over judgmental. They rely on you for them to be happy, and they expect you to do what you're told to do, basically. And they're very manipulative and very controlling as well. So they like to isolate you and keep you away from other people, so they can just make sure that what they want happens.
Okay, and in your own case, what sort of narcissistic behavior did your mum show towards you as a child and adolescent?
Well, she was physically there. I was very well clothed, very well fed, because with narcissistic parents, especially, they like to portray this outside image of that, we're a perfect family. So from the outside looking in, I was well cared for, well looked after, but emotionally, I was just completely neglected, and I was abused physically and verbally. So daily, I was told that I was ugly, useless. She wished I'd have died at birth, because I was actually born with a cord wrapped around my neck, which caused medical issues. And she often said I it didn't even have the audacity to be born properly. They were, and anything I did, she would make sure that she was more of the center of attention. She would keep me as small as she possibly could, and she really knocked any confidence I had and any determination. So she was like the center of attention to soothe her inner child wound. So outside of the house, she acted like this perfect mother, like caring and loving. But once we got inside, it was a whole different story again.
And how did that impact your childhood in making friends with, people in your area, with your cousins, for example, your brothers and sisters, people in school you went to school with?
Yeah, I was bullied at school because I was classed as the weird child, because I was too scared to kind of like really make friends with people, because I thought if I say the wrong thing, it's going to get back to my mum, and then I'm going to be in trouble for it. So I was the kind of like the strange child, and then end up being bullied at school. But then when I went back home, I couldn't like tell my mother I'd been bullied, because she would have. And I did once try to say that, and she, well, it's your own fault. You should be nicer to people, and then they wouldn't bully you. So there was never any, where most people got that safety of going home to somewhere safe, and getting away from the bullies. I had no safety place to go. Going home was my worst nightmare. I'd rather have been at school with the bully than go home to my mother, because it wasn't a nice environment to be in. And it did affect me with all my relationships. I ended up jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, and ended up in a couple of narcissistic relationships as well, because to me that was like my norm. So I didn't think it was strange how they were treating me, until I suddenly kind of sat up one day and I thought, I'm the common factor here. It's like, maybe if I change, people around me will be different as well. So that was one of the things that really set me on the journey of like self-discovery, of like thinking, where do I need to like look at myself and go inwards and heal myself, so I can, be the person I really want to be.
And what happened in that particular romantic relationship that caused you to say, enough is enough? I'm going to change track here and have a better life for myself. What circumstances led to that happening?
I'd gone out for the day with friends, and he didn't like it. And when I came back home, he was angry, and he accused me of going off and having an affair, which I hadn't. And he picked me up and threw me against the wardrobe, and I ended up with concussion and whiplash. And thought, I can't stay here. It's not safe. He's going to end up killing me if I'm not careful. So it was that realization that I needed to do something here for my own safety. And then it thought, okay, well, why are these patterns repeating itself? Why have I had that sort of childhood and then gone into a similar environment in my adulthood? Something here needs to change.
And was there, in previous romantic relationships you had, was there a common thread in terms of the narcissistic behavior towards you? Or was it, case by case, different people treated you in certain narcissistic ways in different relationships?
Yeah, that was my first kind of like serious relationship. And then I had a relationship again that was very narcissistic. He isolated me from my family, my friends, and everything, was all about him. And if I wasn't doing things that he wanted to do, he was very, why aren't you doing this? You need to do this, after all I've done for you. So it's that kind of thing where I thought it really needs to sort of like, I'd been working on my self-development by then, and I thought I'm still not quite gotten it right, because I'm still attracting narcissistic people into my life. So I really upped it all and realized that I really had to work on it. And I ended up in a relationship with my children's father, who wasn't a narcissist. But when I got pregnant, I had two little boys, and got pregnant with my third child. And a friend casually said to me, "Oh, I didn't realize you was pregnant. I bet you'd have a little girl." And that was a real pivotal moment in my life. I thought, no, I don't want to have a little girl, because what happens if I had the same relationship with my little girl as I had with my mother, and my mother had with her mother, because my grandmother was a narcissist as well. And it was like, I really need to kind of work even harder to make sure I don't end up, a narcissist like my mother. Because at the time I didn't really understand, that how that sort of like worked. And I really worked hard on it. And thankfully I went on and had two girls, and they are like my best friends. I have broke that cycle, thankfully. I've worked and healed on a lot of my inner child wounds, and now I'm in a very loving relationship. I've been with my husband 13 years this month, actually. So and it's a completely different relationship to the narcissistic ones I had, thankfully.
And where did you meet your husband?
I met him at a friend's birthday party, and then we actually happened to get together on his birthday, because he was actually a toy boy. It was his 30th birthday party, and I kind of just joked and said, "I'm single and you're single. We should go out on a date." Not any sort of like joking, because he was like 13 years younger than me. Didn't expect anything more. The next day I got a text saying, "So when are we going to go out for a drink?" And I thought, oh, why not? I've got men friends. Another one won't hurt. We met on the Tuesday, and the rest, they say, is history. We've been together ever since. So yeah, it's
Well done to you. And in
thank
terms
you.
of getting help for their narcissistic behavior, that you found in your mom's relationship with you over your childhood and adolescent years, and then you had a number of relationships with men who were narcissistic towards you. What type of help or therapy did you require or get to help you overcome your lack of self-belief or self-worth?
Well, I got involved in personal development books in my late 20s, and I've read lots and lots of personal development books, but it wasn't until I actually realized that with trauma, from my childhood was stored in my body, and started having therapy to release that trauma and heal that trauma and heal my inner child wounds, which was a real game changer, because I worked for years on my mindset, but I was kind of like scared to do anything. I thought, why am I so scared if I've got the knowledge and got the skills? Why is my heart pounding, and why is my palms sweating, and why am I so scared to do stuff? And then I realized that, going forward, that it was a trauma that was trapped in my body. So it's like my body was like that 6-year-old that was scared of her mother, trying to go and do things and speak out. Whereas when I was younger, speaking out was a dangerous thing. So I had lots of sort of therapy to do that, like inner child work, working somatically in the body, and something called brain spotting as well, which is what I now do with my clients, which is a very, very powerful tool, because it actually gets into where the amygdala is in the brain, where the trauma is stored. And it's basically a simplified version, is it opens the door to kind of let the trauma out. And it's all to do with the eye position that you look at. With it connects with a spot in your brain to help you to release that stored trapped trauma that's in your body.
And in terms of your own children, I think you said you've got 2 sons and 2 daughters.
Yeah.
How do yourself and your husband manage the relationship with your children to make sure it's a happy home, that your children are developing in school, as people, in life in general, to make sure they have well-balanced relationships with you, your husband, and their friends in school, for example?
Yeah, well, they're actually past school age. They're all, my youngest is 29 now, so the other ones are 30, 32 and 34. So, and I've got 9 grandchildren. So I can remember being 7 and saying to myself, all I want to do in life is to be a mum, because I know how to be a good mum, because I'm going to do the opposite of what my mum did. So I just made sure that the children knew that they were loved, that they were seen and they were heard. And that's what people want, who, especially if they've had a traumatic childhood, they need to be seen and to be heard, and to be listened to, and to be valued for the person that they are, however they turn up in the world. So I did that with my children, and it's lovely to see that my grandchildren are very, very confident, outgoing, because my children have done that with their children. So it's like I am that cycle breaker, because trauma can go back 7 generations, but it stops with me. The trauma in our generation stops with me. Going forward, it won't be there anymore, because they've had a completely different childhood to the childhood that I had. There was lots of love, there was lots of laughter. I cared about their feelings, no matter what it was. Even if children, they came home with something I thought, well, that seems minor, but to them, it's their whole world. And an example of that was my 4-year-old granddaughter came to mine for my birthday party. And because it was quite a busy, because there's like 9 grandchildren, like 4 children, it's quite a busy household. And she went home and didn't get a piece of my birthday cake. Nobody kind of really noticed. She woke up the next morning sobbing her eyes out. And my daughter said, what's the matter? She said, I never got a bit of grandma's birthday cake, And as it happens, one of my grandson's birthdays the next day. So I was going over to see them anyway. And I said, I will bring you a piece of birthday cake, because I knew to her that was a really, really important thing in her little mind, even well, it's just a piece of cake. It doesn't really matter, most people might think. But I understood, coming from her, that it was really important to her to have a bit of her grandma's birthday cake to celebrate her grandma's birthday. So it's understanding those little things in life, And when we're busy parents, we don't always catch all of them, but it's catching most of them the best you can, and realizing and letting our children know that if we do something that we feel is wrong, to say, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Whereas a narcissist would never say, I'm sorry, it's wrong, because they always blame somebody else. Like I often heard, I wouldn't get angry if you just behaved yourself and done as you're told. It's your fault that I'm angry. So as children, we take everything as our fault. So we're constantly apologizing and trying to people please.
You mentioned there a few minutes ago, in terms of your own childhood, that if you were bullied in school, for example, and you went home and told your mom would say you weren't being nice enough to your friends in school, for example. In terms of your own children, when they were going to school, if they came home with a problem, did you say to your children, or did you give them techniques to stand up for themselves? In other words, be assertive without being aggressive?
Yeah, I would talk to them, and I would also say, often like with bullies, they're bullied because that's what they've learned, and they're also very, very scared. So it's understanding, where that's coming from, but also, yeah, have those boundaries and stand up for yourself. Obviously, not in a violent way, like punching somebody if somebody punches you, but it's once you've got that kind of demeanor that you're going to be standing up for yourself, you're less likely to be bullied in the first place, because bullies tend to pick on people that do feel scared, and they think that are easy prey, is for lack of a better word. So yeah, my children were very, very confident and outgoing, so they didn't have those sorts of issues. So it's realizing that those things sort of it's all about the inner child wound, and when they've got that confidence and they feel good enough and they feel valued as a person, they're less likely to get bullied in the first place, which would be ideal for everybody, because it's not a nice feeling being bullied.
Do you find, for example, as a result of your upbringing, that you found it hard to establish boundaries with people and in working relationships, in romantic relationships, until you started to read these self-development books and to get therapy to help you to overcome your upbringing?
Absolutely. I was the biggest people pleaser going, because as a child of a narcissistic mother, you learn very quickly to make sure that she's as happy as she can be, because you're less likely to get abuse from her. So I was the biggest people pleaser going, and everybody used to say, "I'll go ask Brooke, she'll always say yes." Because as well as that, our inner child wounds, because we don't feel good enough and we don't feel worthy or important. If we say no to somebody, we're going to we feel we're going to get rejected and lose that person. So we're so scared of losing people as well, that will do anything we can to keep other people happy. And I can remember saying, I will help everybody be happy around me, even if it kills me, because I couldn't stand the thought of anybody being unhappy, because I wasn't happy as a child. But it nearly did kill me, because I was exhausted running around after everybody else. But then when I started putting boundaries in place, I always say to my clients, it's a great way to filter out those people that you're true friends, and those that are just hanging around you because you've got no boundaries, and they benefit from you having no boundaries. Because once I started saying no to people, some people just kind of like disappeared out of my life. Others kicked up a fuss and said, what do you mean you're saying no to me? How dare you? I need your help. You need to come and do this. Like, well, no, sorry, I can't do that at the moment. So then they would stop asking me, and they would go off and find somebody else that would say yes to them. But yeah, it soon filtered out those people that were my true friends, and those that were benefiting from me having no boundaries.
Lady, well done. It takes time and effort to be able to establish boundaries, and it can be a life learning habit for a lot of people who struggle, in childhood with or in their adolescent years with, narcissistic parents, or feeling of being not worthy enough to be around people. So well done to you. Looking back at your past, what circumstances would you consider as character building blocks that have made you the person you've become today?
I've got great resilience and determination. I was a very determined young child, before I kind of had the stuffing knocked out of me. But I'm very resilient. I always kind of bounce back. And one thing I will always say about my mother is she gave me the knowledge or the intuition to read body language. I'm very good at reading body language, because as a child of a narcissistic mother, you soon learn to watch their body language to see what kind of mood they're in, so you could adjust to it, to like either stay out the way or be there, so she can, if she needs you for something. So it's helped me sort of like moving forward, and I'm really resilient. I've got a really broad shoulders now, and if somebody wants to say something to me, I don't take offense at it. I always look at it now, because I work a lot with what we call parts internal family systems, where I believe that we've got our true self, we've got our inner child, and we have what I call parts that show up when our inner child is feeling not good enough, or not worthy, or not lovable, or important. And these can be things like procrastination, self-sabotage, emotional eating, anxiety, anger, depression, being stressed, worried. So when that shows up, instead of saying I'm an anxious person, it's like, okay, a part of me has shown up of anxiety. What does my inner child need? Where is it feeling scared that the part of anxiety just showed up to protect it? So they're like a bit like an army. So like if you've got an actual open wound on your arm, you'd put a plaster on it to protect it. And this is what these protective parts come in for. They see us as that little 5 or 6 year old helpless child that needs protecting. So when that shows up, so like if I suddenly became angry about something, it's like, okay, why am I feeling angry? What belief system am my running? Is it my belief system? Is it, something from my childhood? And then you can start to process it and work it out and find out what your inner child needs. And that's part of the work I do to help to heal the inner child, getting the adult version to connect with their inner child. Because when the inner child is feeling healed and happy, then you become a more confident, outgoing, healed person yourself. Because I always think that way to describe a narcissist is like a toddler in an adult's body. They can't control their emotions. So every time they explode, it's like a toddler spitting out a dummy and having a temper tantrum because they can't deal with their emotions.
We've had COVID, we have the internet, we have online cyberbullying. Is narcissistic behavior as bad as ever it was before?
I think it's always been there, but like you say, but now we've got the internet and it's more prevalent now and being seen more now because there's a greater awareness of it now because so many of my clients come to me, and if I had a pound for everyone that said, oh, well, that's just the way the women in my family are, I'd be a lot more wealthier than I am now because, okay, we get people in our family, well, okay, well, she's always been like that. We've always had to be careful what we say. We've always had to tread on eggshells around her. We've always not had to mention so and so in the family's name. But that could be the fact that they're actually a narcissist, but people don't realize it. And I've got clients who are in their 50s and 60s and now realizing actually their mothers are narcissists, but they just thought that their mothers were just the way they are because their grandmothers were like it. Like I said, it can go back 7 generations. So it's understanding that it's always been around, but it's just, I think, being more to the forefront now. Now we've got like the internet and we've got, more knowledge and information accessible to our fingertips than we had years ago.
Question for you around body language. You mentioned there a couple of minutes ago that you knew from, by reading your mum's body language, whether she's going to be narcissistic towards you or not. What type of body language would a narcissistic person display?
Yeah, that depends. Because they can be very clever. If they will turn any situation they can to make sure that they're sort of like in the center, so they can come across as really, really charming and really, really nice, and they can also come across as really, really aggressive. But it's just understanding that person and what they want. So they can be like a sheep in wolf's clothing, really. A wolf in sheep's clothing, sorry. Like, I heard a saying a few weeks ago, which I thought sums it up, an angel in the street, a devil behind doors, because they can be a really, really charming person outside, be the center of the community, helping in charities and stuff. Everybody thinks they're wonderful, but behind closed doors, they're another person. But you can maybe, if like you were having a conversation and you said something that they didn't like, they may go, like take a deep, like they're about to explode, but they don't always explode, especially if they're out in public. And then you think, oh my goodness, when I get home, they're really going to explode at me because they will control it because they don't want to be seen as somebody that's exploding out in public. They want to be seen as this perfectly lovely, charming person. So it's really being aware of the different and unusual kind of like movement or way they are. Like, if my mother came storming towards me, walking really, really fastly, I would know that she was on a mission and she was angry about something and I was going to suffer, regardless of whether it was me, had done anything or not. So it's that understanding. And if she was sat there and she said, come sit beside me, and want to have a chat, I think, okay, what does she want? Because she's after something. So it's like, but I would have to go and sit beside her and kind of like play that role, because if I didn't, she would then get really angry and fire up, and I would suffer even more.
What you're saying there effectively is narcissistic people, when they're out in public, they can use open, body language to appear that they're happy within themselves. In other words, they're disguising their feelings by having this open body language. They're welcoming people when in fact they're not. Yeah. So, and, the person who's innocent then can fall for that and get caught up in a narcissistic trap, in other words.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Looking back at your life, at all the relationships you've had, family, work, romantic, academic. What have you learned about all these relationships that have stood you the test of time?
That everybody's got their own inner child wounds and they're all operating from their own experience in life. Like now, if I see somebody who's angry, years ago I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done wrong? Why are they angry? But now I think, oh, I wonder what's going on in their life for them to like explode and be angry, because there's often something going on behind closed doors that we don't know about, and they would have exploded. And I often tell a story that was very, very pivotal in my life, probably 30 years ago now, probably a bit more. I worked as a cashier in a supermarket, and this little old lady came through. She was in her 80s, pearl necklace, matching earrings, tweed suit, very, all very prim and proper. And she had a face like thunder. And I thought, what have I done to upset her? Because I hadn't worked on my healing then. And it's all thinking, oh my God, I've upset her. So I tried really hard, because the thought of somebody being upset with me just would, was appalling to me. And I couldn't stand that thought. And she hardly spoke. And I went home and thought, oh, what have I done? What have I done? And then kind of forgot about it. Then the next week, she came through in the shop again. Oh, please don't come through my checkup. But she came straight through my checkup, thinking, why does she hate me? Why has she put me through all this? So it's all about my story that I was running in my mind. And this went on for a couple of weeks. And then on about the fifth or sixth week, she put a big bouquet of flowers on the conveyor belt. I thought, right, got you. She's going to smile. She's going to talk to me. It must be her birthday or somebody's birthday. I said, oh my goodness. I said, what a beautiful bouquet of flowers. I said, is it your birthday? Are they for you? Or are you treating a friend, sort of thing? And what she said next could have knocked me over the feather. And I was completely speechless. She said, no, my dear. She said, they are for you. She said, because you have helped me so much over the last few weeks. She said, you don't realize it, but my husband was at end of life care. And when the carers were in, I got some respite and I could come out and do my shopping. And I quickly realized that you were smiling and friendly no matter how I was feeling. But I couldn't talk to you about it because I didn't want to cry in front of everybody in the supermarket. So she's like, my husband passed away, and I kind of got myself enough together to talk about it now. So I wanted to come in here and say thank you, which to me was like, always be curious about other people, because I was running the story, oh my goodness, she hates me, I've upset her, what have I done? And her story was, what a wonderful young woman, always smiling, always really nice, always really cheerful. I can just, get through and do my shopping without having to say anything. So it just goes to show that we never quite know what's going on, behind somebody's eyes, because she wasn't mad at me or hated me at all. She actually was total opposite. And after that, it really made me curious. When somebody's angry or upset, I always think, I wonder what's going on in their lives. Their container must be so full, it's just overflowed, and they've exploded, and they can't deal with the emotions that they've got at the moment.
It's a very interesting story. It just reminds me of a post I saw on LinkedIn there maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, where I can't remember the person who put the post up on LinkedIn, but I can remember some of the post, which was, if you tell yourself a story in your own mind about a particular person, you could be catastrophizing in your own mind, and you're feeding yourself incorrect information.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
exactly
really
what I
have
was
to
doing.
control those thoughts and get them out of your mind, because you could find yourself going down the wrong path in trying to put hurdles in the way of building relationships with people. Yeah, well, that's a great story to share with the audience. One final question here for you. Name one relationship you'd like to have again, given another chance, and what would you do differently or better this time?
I would definitely go back to have a relationship with my granddad, who passed away when I was 6, and have him live longer, because he was very wise beyond his age. And he said a couple of things to me when I was like little, and I'm like, I don't get that, granddad. He said, just remember it when you're a big girl, and it will hold you in instead. And he was one of the, my kind of safe places. I used to say, I used to love going to see my granddad and having fun with him, because he was just, he gave me that hope that not all adults are mean and nasty like my mum, as I used to sort of like think. So it gave me hope that there were nice people out in the world. They weren't all like my mother, and he was an amazing man. So, but unfortunately he died when I was 6. So I only got 6 years with him, and I only remember obviously like a couple of those years, but they were amazing. So I'd love to have him back again, and sort of show him what I've done with my life, and how I've progressed, because I think he'd be quite proud of me.
And can you remember any of the wisdom that your granddad shared with you in those 6 years that you shared a life with him?
Yeah, he used to say to me, "What goes around comes around," and not all people are what they seem on face value. And I was like, okay, I don't know what, but I think he was trying to say to me about my mother, because and let me know that he knew that how she was acting wasn't who she really was, and I really get to know that. And I think if I see somebody, I never think, right, I'm going to decide who you're like. I want to actually get to know them and find out who they are underneath, their mask. Because we often all wear a mask of like, yeah, I'm fine, but underneath we're not always fine, and especially if we've had childhood trauma, we grow up, I can remember my mum saying, put your smile face on because people will talk if not. So even if I'd just, gone through a horrendous time with that, I just have to go out and go, hi, yeah. And if people say, how are you? I'm fine. With that really fake smile and thinking underneath, I'm just feeling dead and empty inside. Can you not see that I need rescuing sort of thing? But yeah, so he also said, whatever goes around comes around. So, just be kind. And I've tried to do that all my life, to make sure, whoever I come across in my life, that I'm kind to them, even to the point of that lady in the supermarket. Even though she wasn't showing kindness to me as I thought, I was still being kind to her because that's the way my granddad said to be. So I thought, yeah, he was an amazing man, so he must have some idea.
This has been a fascinating conversation today. And two things I can take away from it in particular are, first of all, you don't know what's going on in people's lives, and people might not seem to be what they appear to be. So people could appear on the face of it being happy, but inside them, they're very torn up and very confused people. And secondly, in terms of people's body language, it's very easy to fall into a trap of thinking that people are happy by displaying open, warm body language, when in fact, they're actually very unhappy. So don't fall into the habit of thinking people are happy by displaying warm body language. That's kind of manipulative behavior. And it's something we need to watch out for in life, because otherwise it could have consequences for us down the road if we start developing relationships with people who are narcissistic, I suppose you could say. So thank you for your time today, Brooke. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
So here's the interesting thing, John. The first marriage I broke up because the excuse I gave back then was, we're not compatible. My husband wasn't as driven as I was, but the truth was, I was cheating a lot. And I was cheating a lot because I had my own childhood traumas that led me to seeking constant approval, seeking constant attention, and nobody ever was good enough. And everybody around me, including my husband back then, through my first marriage, was having a missing piece within themselves. And the truth, John, I had a missing piece within myself.